God bless you, dear ones. Welcome to the Word with Chester. Today we'll continue studying the 14th chapter of the book of 2nd Samuel. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you because I know your time is valuable and you take the time to listen to our program. I want you to know how much I appreciate that. I also want you to know that I pray for you every day. Everyone who will listen to this ministry, I pray for. If I can't mention your name, I mention all of the ones that watch this ministry. If I see your name, I say a prayer for you. But I know many are watching that name does not show up. But thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for watching this ministry. Today, we will continue study in the 14th chapter of the book of 2nd Samuel. In our last session, I think our camera cut off at about verse 14. Today we're going to do a recap. I may start our reading. I'll start our reading again at verse 12, and then we will continue to the conclusion of the chapter, God willing. I will not prolong time today, but again, thank you for being here. And if you stay with this ministry, you will have read completely through this Bible, verse by verse and chapter by chapter. Well, let me give a recap of what was going on in this particular passage of scripture in chapter 14. Joab, who actually worked close to the king, so we know that Joab, he did many things that at the order of the king, and so he was close to the king, and he saw that the king felt bad about his son Absalom not being there and all of the things that had transpired. And so in Joab seeing all these things, he devised a plan, and he went and got a wise woman down in a place called Tekoa. And he told her exactly what to say. In other words, let your acting abilities come out here now, and we're going to go down and talk to the king. And they went down to the king, and she was saying to the king what Joab had told her to say. In so many words, she was saying that she had a son who had killed someone. And if you know the law, if you know what the law had said, that if anyone killed someone, a person, the person who was killed, his family had the right to go against him. That was called the avenger. They had the right to go and kill him and track him down if he did not make it to the city of refuge. Then if he did make it to the city of refuge, his life would be spared, and actually he'd get to have a fair trial, if you please. But the family had the right to kill him if he did not make it to the city of refuge. And so this was the case in this story that Joab devised. And you have to understand, Joab knew the law. He knew it as good as anybody because he was in Israel, and he was a commander in Israel, a general, if you please, and worked beside the king, so he knew the law. And so he devised this story and told the woman to go and tell David, talk to David and tell him this story, that her son killed someone, and the avenger in the family, they were after her son, and they were threatening her, and all of these words that go along with it. You can easily read the first part of this chapter, and you'll see what I'm saying. And so in going to the king and saying these words, she after the king said, yes, I will take care of this. You don't have to worry about your life and your son's life. Then they brought it up that the king is not doing even for his own son Absalom, that that he was doing for her and her son. So let's go in, let's read verse 12. Then the woman said, let thine handmaid, I pray thee, speak one word unto my king, to my Lord, a small Lord, the king. And he said, say on. In other words, say what's on your mind. In verse 13, and the woman said, why then hast thou thought such a thing against the people of God? Question mark. Why are you thinking such a thing against the people of God? For the king doeth speak this thing as one who is faulty. You're saying these things to me and you're doing this for me, but you are faulty. I hope you're getting this picture. You are faulty in that the king doeth not fetch home again his banished. In other words, you're doing this for me, but you're faulty because you haven't did it for your own son. You haven't did it for your own children. I hope you're getting that picture. Shall I read 13 again? And the woman said, why then hast thou thought such a thing against the people of God? For the king doeth speak this thing as one who is faulty, in that the king doeth not fetch home his banished. Why do you do this? You're faulty because you don't do it. You're not doing this for yourself. And not only that there's other people in the kingdom that are going through this, through much the same thing. Now let's read in verse 14. For we must needs die. We must needs die and are as water spilled on the ground, which cannot be gathered up again. Neither doeth God respect any person, yet doeth he devise means that his banished is not expelled from him. Can you see? She brought God, that's a capital G-O-D, in the picture. Shall I read 14 one more time? For we must needs die, and our water spilled on the ground, which cannot be gathered up again. Neither doeth God respect any person. God does not respect any person, yet doeth he devise means that his banished is not expelled from him. Well, even God devises means that his banished is not dispelled from him. Can you get the picture? Thank God for the plan of salvation. God has a way of even though someone is banished, to help them and restore them if at all possible. And it is possible with God. Yet doeth he devise means that his banished is not expelled from him. And she brought God in the picture, showing God. Yet these are the words of Joab that's speaking through this woman. In verse 15, now therefore I am come to speak of this thing unto my Lord the king, because the people have made me afraid. And thy handmaiden said, I will now speak unto the king. It may be that the king will perform the request of his handmaiden. Can you get what she is saying here? Verse 16, for the king will hear to deliver his handmaid out of the hand of the man who would destroy me and my son together out of the inheritance of God. Now let's read on in verse 17. Then thine handmaiden said, the word of the Lord, I'll read that again. Then thine handmaiden said, the word of my Lord, it's small, Lord, small l, the word of the of my Lord the king shall now be comforting, for as an angel of God, so is my Lord the king to discern good and bad. Therefore, the Lord thy God, that's a capital G-O-D and a capital L-O-R-D, the Lord thy God will be with thee. I'm going to continue reading. Then the king answered and said unto the woman, hide not from me, I pray thee, the thing that I shall ask thee. And the woman said, let my lord the king now speak. In other words, they're in conversation here. And so David is saying, I want the truth from you now. Don't hide what I'm about to ask you. I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to tell me the truth. Shall I read 18 again? I want you to get that now. Then the king answered and said unto the woman, hide not from me, I pray thee, the thing that I shall ask thee. And the woman said, let my lord the king now speak. Verse 19, and the king said, is not the hand of Joab with thee in all this? Is not the hand of Joab with thee in all of this? In other words, does Joab have a part of all of this, what you've just come to me with? And the king said, is not the hand of Joab with thee in all of this? And the woman answered and said, as thy soul liveth, my lord, the king, none can turn to the right hand or to the left from anything that my lord the king has spoken. For thy servant Joab, he ordered me, and he put all these words in the mouth of thine handmaiden. In other words, can you see? The king asked her directly, did Joab have anything to do with this? And all she could do is just tell him the truth. Yes, he did. So let's read on in verse 20. To change the face of the matter, hath thy servant Joab done this thing, and my Lord is wise. My small L-O-R-D, talking about David himself, is wise according to the wisdom of an angel of God, capital G-O-D, to know all things that are in the earth. I want you to get that picture. Let me read it again. Joab did all these things to change, this is still the woman speaking to David, to change the face of the matter, saith thy servant Joab, done this thing, and my Lord is wise according to the wisdom of the angel of God, to know all things that are in earth. Now let's read in verse 21. Here we're going to find that David forgives Absalom, but let's read on. And the king said unto Joab, behold, now I have done this thing. Go, therefore, bring the young man Absalom again. Here the king sent Joab down to get Absalom now. In verse 22, and Joab fell to the ground on his face and bowed himself and thanked the king. And Joab said, today thy servant knoweth that I have found grace in thy sight, my lord, O king, in that the king has fulfilled the request of thy servant. In other words, Joab fell down because actually the king could have had him killed for devising such a thing, but yet he fell down because the king received him and let him know, you go down and get Absalom. Now verse 23. So Joab rose and went to Geshur and brought Absalom to Jerusalem. And the king said, let him turn to his own house, and let him not see my face. So Absalom returned to his own house, and saw not the king's face. He went back to his own house, but he did not see the king's face. Well, get the picture. Went back to Israel there, but yet still did not see the king. Verse 25. 25, but in all Israel there is none to be so much praised as Absalom for his beauty. This lets you know what a handsome man he was. I'll read 25 again. But in all Israel there was none to be so much praised as Absalom for his beauty, from the sole of his foot even to the crown of his head. There was no blemish in him. Now that's saying something for someone to be that beautiful, that handsome, especially calling a man beautiful. I know in our culture, men don't get called beautiful too much. We may be called handsome, and some might even be called pretty. But beautiful now, talking to a man, well, this is how the Bible here is describing Absalom, a beautiful man, no blemishes from his foot all the way to the crown of his head. That lets you know if anybody looked perfect, it was Absalom. But I also want you to know just because someone looks good and looks beautiful on the outside, that does not mean that they're the most beautiful on the inside. But I hope you got verse 25. Let's read verse 26. And when he cut the hair of his head, for it was at every year's end that he cut it, because the hair was heavy on him. Therefore he cut it. He weighed the hair of his head at 200 shekels after the king's weight. Can you get the picture? 200 shekels. That's how much his hair weighed when they cut it. When they cut it off, it weighed that much. Now his hair weighed 200 shekels after the king's weight, and at that time that was the most accurate weight, was the king's weight. 200 shekels. Now that was heavy. I told you, I explained the unit of measurements before in a prior lesson, but 200 shekels, that's what his hair weighed that they cut off his head. I want you to get that picture. Now in verse 27, and unto Absalom there were born 3 sons and 1 daughter, whose name was Tamar. He named that daughter after his sister, and that daughter was named Tamar. She was a woman of a fair countenance. She was very beautiful. A fair countenance. When they're talking about a beautiful woman, they use that term, a fair countenance. She was a beautiful woman. Now verse 28. So Absalom dwelt 2 full years in Jerusalem, and saw not the king's face. Verse 29, therefore Absalom sent for Joab to have sent him to the king, but he would not come to him. And when he sent again the second time, he would not come. Well, Absalom sent down to Joab, and Joab did not come. He knew that Joab had the ear to the king, so he sent and got Joab, sent to get Joab, but Joab, I'll read 29 again. Therefore Absalom sent for Joab to have sent him to the king, but he would not come to him. And when he sent again the second time, he would not come. He sent for Joab now, but Joab did not come. Now let's read in verse 30. Therefore he said unto his servants, see, Joab's field is near mine, and he hath barley there. Go and set it on fire. And Absalom's servants set the field on fire. Now, this is what Absalom told his servants, to go burn Joab's field. And they did as Absalom had told them, and went down and burned Joab's field. In verse 31, then Joab arose and came to Absalom. Well, he got his attention then, didn't he? He got his attention, so he did not come when he asked him to come the first 2 times. times. When he burned his field, there he come down there. He's going to talk to him about this now. Verse 31, and Joab arose and came to Absalom unto his house, and said unto him, why have thy servant set my field on fire? Verse 32, and Absalom answered Joab, behold, I sent unto thee, saying, come here, that I may send thee to the king to say, why am I come to Geshur? It come from Geshur. It had been good for me to have been there still. In other words, why did you send and get me to bring me home? It would have been better off if I stayed down in Geshur where my other people was, where my mama's family was. It would have been better if I'd have been there still. Now, therefore, let me see the king. Let me see the king's face, and if there be any iniquity in me, let him kill me. In other words, now Joab, he was this close to the king that he's the one decided who came before him or not. Can you get the picture of the king, someone of that importance? People don't just flood to them anytime they get ready to go up to him. Somebody has to be in charge of selecting who's going to go up before the king. And this was Joab who made this decision. I'll read 32 one more time. And Absalom answered Joab, behold, I sent unto thee, saying, come here, that I may that I may send thee to the king, and to say, why am I come from Geshur? It had been good for me to have been still there. Now, therefore, let me see the king's face, and if there be any iniquity in me, let him kill me. Let me go before the king. If there's any iniquity in me, let him kill me. In other words, giving the king the right to judge the matter. And if there's any iniquity in him, the king could kill his own son or kill Absalom. But let's read on in verse 33. So Joab came to the king and told him, and when he had called for Absalom, he came to the king and bowed himself on his face to the ground before the king, and the king kissed Absalom. Can you understand that? The king kissed his own son. He kissed Absalom. Now, I don't care who you are, you love your children, and David loved his children. You see, this is the thing a lot of people don't realize. When you love your children, you love them when they do good things, and you love them when they don't do good things. And what had transpired prior to this, for those of you that's just now tuning in, please excuse me, or what had transpired is Absalom had a full-blood sister, and there was Absalom's brother was named Ammon, who was actually a half-brother to Absalom, and his sister Tamar, and Ammon loved his sister because she was a very beautiful woman. Ammon loved her, and he, by divisive means, got her to come to his place, and because he played sick, to bake him a cake so he could eat and so forth like that. And he actually raped her. And after he raped her, he despised her and put her out of his house and bolted the door. And when he raped her, that was a shame. He had taken the girl's virginity, and after taking the girl's virginity, put her out. Can you get the picture? Didn't want anything to do with her. He hated her, and what Absalom did, he avenged his sister and killed Ammon. So that's how everything transpired. And then Absalom went down to his mother's people's house, who his grandfather was a king himself. So I want you to get the picture of what is all this transpiring here. And now we come into the picture where he was away for a while, and he's coming back to the kingdom. And David here for the first time received his son, and he kissed him. I want you to know, I'm going to say it again. You love your children regardless to what. You love them, and there's a place in your heart that wants them to come, and if there's trouble, to reconcile. And here we find that the trouble in David's house. But I also want you to know that the trouble is not over yet. As we read, we're going to find more trouble in David's house because God had sent the word that this would be because of David's great sin. What did I tell you before? And I'm just going to say this really quick. This complete story is about David. Yes, we read other names here and we see other things happening, but the complete story is about David. And David, let me let you know, God had told him that there was going to be trouble in your house because you had sinned. He sent the prophet Nathan down to talk to him. And David repented of his sins. He had committed adultery. He had also committed murder. But yet, and he thought it was hidden and thought it was covered up. But God sent a prophet down to let him know that God sees everything that goes on. And David repented of his sins. But yet, God told him he would not take the kingdom from him like he did Saul, but he was going to have troubles in his house. And all of that is unfolding now, where God had told him that it would happen. So I want you to understand what is actually transpiring in this great story about David. Now, the entire book of the first of Second Samuel is about David and the kingdom of David, the kingship of David. So I want you to get the entire picture of what God is doing in the life of David, what God is doing, and always keeping his word. God is always faithful to keep his word, and that's what you have to always know, that God will always keep his word. Well, my dears, I want you to know that I love you with the love of the Lord. You stay with us and you will read completely through this Bible, verse by verse and chapter by chapter. My dears, I want you to know that I love you. I love you with the love of the Lord, and I pray for you every day, and I ask that you pray for me. God bless you, my dears.